you hear, oh, it's a book by somebody who's been a chef for a long time talking about the food industry. Okay. And then you open it up and the writing is so vibrant that it's obvious that he could have just made a living as a writer. And so you're like, oh, okay.
You're listening to Books We've Loved from NPR,
the book show where we reread old favorites and tell you why they still matter today.
I'm Andrew Limbaugh.
I'm B.A. Parker.
Parker.
How you doing, Andrew?
You're going to learn a lot today about me. You're going to learn...
I feel like I know too much.
You're going to learn a lot about me, yeah.
Through what we read?
Yeah, from today's book.
I don't know if that's in your favor, my friend.
I know, it's no good. Folks, today we are talking about Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. And here joining us to also learn a lot more about me is NPR critic at large Eric Deggans. He's also the Knight Professor of Journalism and Media Ethics at Washington and Lee University. What's up, Eric?
Hey, man. And, I know you pretty well. We worked together at NPR for a long time. Right. I don't think you're going to surprise me.
Okay, cool. Yeah, all right. So you already clocked me as a kind of Bourdain guy.
Of course. Dude.
Yeah.
Respectfully.
Yeah. Okay, so first, real quick, for folks who haven't read Kitchen Confidential, I'm just going to run through a quick synopsis. It was first published in the year 2000. So Kitchen Confidential is a memoir from a then unknown chef, cockily revealing to an unsuspecting public what's going on behind the scenes at restaurants. You've got drinking, drug use, dirty jokes. You've also got camaraderie, petty crime, and also some really beautiful cooking. There you go.
Great summary. But wait, okay. Andrew, why did you pick this book?
Okay, I picked this book for this project that we're doing, Parker, because I feel like we needed a memoir. There's so many, I think, splashy memoirs that do have a large impact on the culture, and I feel like we needed to sort of represent that in some way. And I think this memoir was a big one. I should say Anthony Bourdain died by suicide in 2018 after a long career in TV. And we're going to be talking about that for a bit later on, so just a heads up for listeners. But I first ran into Bourdain on the first season of Top Chef, the reality TV show on Bravo. It's, the cooking show. And he showed up and everybody was like, oh my God, Bourdain's here. And they're all like whispering and like scared. And I'm like, who is this guy? And then I saw a show and then I was like, okay, I heard he wrote a book. And so I went and got it. And so I would have been around 15 or 16 at this time.
So
highly impressionable.
So young.
Highly impressionable. And it definitely changed me.
You gotta find a photo and like put that up while you're talking. See what you look like.
I had an emo cut, my bangs are down. I was wearing a lot of,
I understand. I was a Dorothy Parker teen. You were an Anthony Bourdain teen. It happens.
Eric, when did you first read it?
I feel embarrassed to admit this, but I didn't read the book until you guys suggested talking about it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I didn't read the book. I listened to the audio book of it,
we're counting that as well, but yeah.
Which was amazing because Anthony Bourdain recorded it.
I want to tell you about the dark recesses of the restaurant underbelly, a subculture whose centuries-old militaristic hierarchy and ethos of rum, buggery, and the lash make for a mix of unwavering order and nerve-shattering chaos.
Anthony Bourdain was hanging with me, describing the restaurant industry while I was driving to and from work. And man, I really missed it when I finished the book. I should probably just start reading the sequel, but it was wonderful. And I realized that so much of things that I'd seen in TV and movies, so many depictions of restaurant life and restaurant culture had come from this book. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. As a longtime TV critic, how deep were you on the No Reservations, Parts Unknown, his TV work? Did you have a long relationship with those shows?
I was passingly familiar with that stuff. I sort of watched his rise in sort of the travel world, the unscripted travel world. I think part of it for me was that until recently, I've always been really intimidated by the world of food culture. And so when he started doing a show that seemed to be more of a travelogue, where he was going to communities and hanging out with the people and talking as much about the cities and the cultures where these things were made as talking about the food, I think that's when I really started to get into it. So it took me a while to hear about what he was doing. And then when I watched Parts Unknown, I was like, oh, yeah.
This is the way so many of the great meals of my life have been enjoyed. Sitting in the street, eating something out of a bowl, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. Scooters going by.
I don't feel like I'm, going to be judged because I don't know what kind of wine goes with what kind of fish, or, why this particular brand of scallops is to be, revered. And I didn't know, of course, that he wasn't like that either. But once I saw him in Parts Unknown, I was like, hey, this guy's charismatic. He knows what he's talking about. He really values sort of street level cooking and culture. And that, of course, comes through in the book.
Yeah. Parker, what about you?
I think my context for Anthony Bourdain is, sadly, there was a one-season sitcom on Fox called Kitchen Confidential that came on when I was a teenager that I had the DVDs
starring Bradley Cooper.
Starring Bradley Cooper as Jack Bourdain. And it was I think it was produced by Darren Star.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I knew of him because of the show. And in passing, I knew who he was. I'd seen the Roadrunner documentary about Bourdain in 2021. And that was my context for him. Also, very controversial documentary. But this was the first time that I'd read any of his work. And also just connecting the man to, I guess, the mythology of him now. Great prose. He's a great writer. So fun. Very much a man of his time. Of the early 2000s, respectfully, he is not for me. I know why a certain man of a certain time or a certain boy of a certain time would be like, oh, he's so cool. In my mind, he gives off the Fonz vibes. I'm just oh, I'm cool. I'll wear my leather jacket.
I'm gonna wear a leather, yeah.
And I listen to the Sex Pistols while I cut scallops.
She was so nice about delivering sort of the ultimate put down.
Yeah. There's a phoniness. You're sensing a phoniness to it.
There's a poserdom for me.
Yeah.
He's I'm a bad boy. But he has to play up to the mythos that has been ascribed to him. Which I recognize, but also he's I'm frank. I'm honest. I tell you like it is. I just,
yeah.
If you don't like it, you don't like it, but also not fully aware of the privilege.
Yep.
I will say
we're gonna get to that.
Yeah.
Listen, Eric, there's and I got the annotated edition, so it's 12 years later, Bourdain goes back to the book and writes notes in the margins.
Oh, man, I should see. That's why I should have.
And it ends with him writing no regrets. And I'm you got a few regrets here, buddy. But I loved his writing. It's I don't know, it's when you read Burroughs or mid 20th century writers who he adores, who are just are we sexist? Yes, but I will defend you.
Yeah.
One of the things that struck me about this book is it felt very much like the work I'd seen, for example, David Simon do in his books, Homicide, Life on the Street, and The Corner, and also in The Wire. And the reason I say that is because Bourdain champions this sort of working class hero kind of vibe. He has a really strict set of values that earn respect from him in the kitchen space. If you're on time, if you do your job without complaining, if you know what's expected of you,
if you don't call in sick,
work hard to live it up. Yeah, don't call in sick.
People are sneezing on that Branzino left and right.
Never miss a day, that kind of stuff. And also this idea that he was standing up for the working class Latino workers, and also, giving props to women who could survive this environment that he said was misogynist, right? But in the middle of all of that, right, he's sort of the educated liberal dude who comes into this working class environment and upholds all these values. So already you got sort of the hypocrisy of this guy who went to a nice college, whose mom helped get his first essay published that led to the publication of the book. His mom, apparently, according to the New York Times, passed an essay that he did to someone she knew at the New Yorker, and that got his first New Yorker piece published.
A guy went to Vassar and got his story published in the New Yorker.
That's the dream, baby.
Yeah. So here's a guy who's educated and connected, but he becomes sort of a working class hero, which is already kind of a weird vibe. But on top of that, saying, well, it's a misogynist environment, but that's the way it has to be, or that's just the way it is. That's the thing that's kind of a drag.
All right, I want to take a quick break right here, and then when we get back, we'll talk more about Anthony Bourdain as a person and dig a bit more into the book.
This message comes from BetterHelp. The holidays are a time of traditions, like making your grandmother's pudding recipe or watching that movie you've seen 1,000 times. Incorporating therapy into your life can help you take time for yourself during what can be a joyful but sometimes tough time of year. And by caring for yourself, you can show up more for the important moments. This December, start a new tradition by taking care of you. Visit betterhelp.com/NPR for 10% off.
Support for NPR and the following message come from Warby Parker, the one-stop shop for all your vision needs. They offer expertly crafted prescription eyewear, plus contacts, eye exams, and more. For everything you need to see, visit your nearest Warby Parker store or head to warbyparker.com.
This message comes from Mint Mobile. Starting at $15 a month, make the switch at mintmobile.com/switch. $45 upfront payment for 3 months. 5 gigabyte plan equivalent to $15 a month. Taxes and fees extra. First 3 months only. See terms.
Okay, we're back. Before we were just talking about our personal relationships to Anthony Bourdain and the book Kitchen Confidential, but really quick, I'm going to run through sort of the trajectory of the book. Eric, like you mentioned, the book first started as a piece in the New Yorker, right? It was titled "Don't Eat Before Reading This," and it went, whatever people used to call things going viral back then, but it went like viral for, 1999, and, folks were reading it, and it went big enough that he got a book deal out of it. From there, that is when Bourdain started his TV career, even though he spends a decent portion of the book sort of dunking on celebrity TV chefs, right? He sort of becomes the monster, right? And, becomes everything he's making fun of. And he meets some of the people, like in the version of the book I have, which is like a republished version. He's like in the afterward, he's like, "Oh, I met all of these dudes I was making fun of, and for the most part, they're all like really nice."
Samuel Lagasse isn't Ewok-like.
Yeah, they're just like really chill dudes, and I was just like being a jerk. Yeah,
he took that leather jacket off and was like, "My bad. Maybe foam food is good. I can't judge. Who am I to judge?
When it's done by somebody I think is cool."
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, I think on reading this book this most recent time, it kind of clicked for me that Bourdain, to me, is a great writer who just happens to find cooking, and that is his vehicle for writing. The blood of a writer is still in here.
Even that was poetic, Andrew.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Well, and it's interesting in the book that he talks about that he had other books that he'd worked on.
Yeah, I think he wrote a couple of crime novels too. Like that was his big thing. Yeah, he was.
So there was a sense that he was active, pretty active as a writer, even before he did this book. So
yeah, I think what comes through in this book though, because like Bourdain as a person is arrogant, is cocky, is brash, and you can hear that in the writing in a really well done way. Like Eric, I know you listened to the audiobook, so you literally heard his voice. But I feel like even reading on the page, his voice is so like vibrant and strong and something that I could like hear, even without actually hearing it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And hearing him read the words, you still could tell that the writing was so powerful. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I think that's one reason why the book took off, because you hear, it's a book by somebody who's been a chef for a long time talking about the food industry. Okay. And then you open it up and the writing is so vibrant that it's obvious that he could have just made a living as a writer. Yeah. And so you're like, oh, okay. I'm being told this story by somebody who has a tremendous amount of expertise as a chef, but is also like a super talented writer. And that's the combination that I think really helped the book take off, besides the fact that it was talking about this area of pop culture and personal entertainment that was also just starting to take off. So it was perfectly timed and it was perfectly sort of written.
But I also think there is sort of I don't want to say classism, but I think there's a way of like a regular chef is treated with a sense of like a blue collar nature instinctively for the New Yorker crowd. Like, oh, he's a chef. Oh, he can write too. Oh my gosh.
He speaks so well. Yeah.
He can pat his head and rub his stomach at the same
Yeah.
time. And then you shove him into the limelight with that. For me, that feels like slightly a bit of condescension, but also there, like, if this was any other.
Well, I can see why you might feel that way, but I would say that if I picked up a book by an actor and it was written like this, I would have the same reaction. Oh my God. Here's somebody who's really talented at one thing, but here's a talent that's not necessarily connected to that first talent, and they're really good at that too. I mean, I say this as somebody who's read a lot of memoirs by actors and musicians that are terrible. And so I'm always blown away when I read a book by somebody who achieved heights in one profession, and it turns out they're a really great writer too, because a lot of times those things just don't go together.
Do you know what's funny? Is that we actually don't know. Like, when it comes to memoirs of actors and musicians, we can see it's like on the screen or listen to like, oh yeah, they're great at that thing and they help never. I've never eaten at Leal. I tried once and it was too expensive, right? And I have no idea what it's food like.
Can we get someone to be like, so what was the food like back in 1999?
I have no idea if he's a good cook.
I want to make sure that we mention the consumer aspects of this book. I loved how he advised readers on when to eat in restaurants. Don't order seafood on Sundays or Mondays because the chef is probably trying to get rid of the stuff that he bought fresh on Fridays, or, try to schedule your fine dining for Tuesdays because the chef will be back in the kitchen after a day off on Mondays and may be ready to try some ambitious stuff, or, don't order great cuts of meat well done because they'll slip in cheaper cuts because you won't be able to taste the difference if it's well done. So again, as somebody who certainly years ago could be intimidated by establishments like that, it was kind of cool to get the inside skinny in that way from the book.
Mm-hmm. I don't think any of that stuff is even like the stuff about restaurants. I doubt is like applicable right now. I think like just the way the restaurant industry has changed so much. It does, however, I did like start cooking after reading this. I did start like, there's a run through of like which knives to buy, and I couldn't afford any of them, so I just bought the cheaper versions. And there's a run through of like, how to
do that, what to spend your money on.
What to spend, or like what are the steps to master first. And I started like chopping a lot. It's it's a real thing. The book hit the bestseller list again in 2018 after Bourdain died by suicide. And I know I went back and read the book after he died, almost like to revisit an old friend, or call it like in mourning or whatever, right? And I think what struck me was how many red flags there were. It's easy to say this in hindsight, but when I was reading it in 2018, 2019, I just thought like, wow, this is a portrait of a man struggling, right? Just because you stop doing hard drugs doesn't mean you aren't still fighting with stuff. I don't know. What did you guys think reading it, knowing what eventually happened to Bourdain?
I mean, one of the things that was interesting to me about this book is that even though it's supposedly a memoir, there are major chunks of his life that he doesn't examine very much.
Yes.
We just hear about his girlfriend who becomes his wife sort of obliquely, like it's only when those situations impact the work. That's when you hear a little bit about it. Working in Baltimore is inconvenient because, he doesn't know drug dealers down there.
So sorry. So sorry.
But at any rate, so I think that's one thing that's kind of a weakness of the book, is that it doesn't give you a lot of insight into that part of his life. But he does admit that it was something that was an issue for him. And you do get a sense that beneath the bravado and beneath this very incisive, sort of searing look at other people, that he could apply that to himself, and that there might have been a fair amount of sort of tortured self-criticism going on there that is only hinted at in the book.
Yeah, I think that was one of the flaws that I found in reading the book. I wrote down that I kept waiting for some kind of real self-reflection because everything feels at a distance while he's talking about everything in the book. And like when he talks about drug use, it is mentioned casually or as an aside to the thing that he's trying to focus on.
Right. I will say, at the risk of really, making a leap, when you see the character Carmi Brazato in The Bear, and
Yeah.
you see his self-loathing and how his perfectionism makes his life torture, it's not hard to imagine that somebody like Anthony Bourdain might have been struggling with something similar.
Yeah, I don't think that's a leap at all. All right, on that note, I want to take a really quick break. And then when we get back, talk about some of the more cultural ramifications of Kitchen Confidential.
This message comes from Schwab. At Schwab, how you invest is your choice, not theirs. That's why when it comes to managing your wealth, Schwab gives you more choices. You can invest and trade on your own. Plus, get advice and more comprehensive wealth solutions to help meet your unique needs. With award-winning service, low costs, and transparent advice, you can manage your wealth your way at Schwab. Visit schwab.com to learn more. This message is sponsored by DSW, the birthplace of the humble brag. Full of all kinds of shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. And when there are never-ending options for every style, mood, occasion, and budget, there is unlimited freedom to play. And that's something to brag about. So go ahead, stock up on fresh sneakers from your favorite brands, or try those boots you always secretly knew you could pull off. Find the shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. DSW, let them surprise you.
Okay, we're back. If we're talking about this image of chefs in popular culture, right? Besides Bourdain and all of his TV shows, right? Besides, like you mentioned, No Reservations and Parts Unknown, you have stuff like the Bradley Cooper movie Burnt, right? Or you have the Jon Favreau movie Chef, all of which
The Menu, if you with
Menu.
Ray Fiennes, if you've seen that one.
Yeah, The Menu.
Yeah.
But all of these have like a certain, definitely type of guy in the Bourdain mold, right? And then I think, Eric, you'd mentioned The Bear. There's a pretty explicit scene in the most recent season when Carmi goes back to his childhood bedroom and he holds up a tattered copy of Kitchen Confidential. And I was like, I don't think we needed to. We knew. I knew you had that.
Yeah,
you didn't need to
I
show
know.
us. You didn't do that.
I know.
A casual
No.
viewer might not know.
That's true. Okay,
That's
fair.
true. It is sort of like from the first season, we knew this was inspired by Bourdain.
Absolutely.
Those
The
of us who knew
toxicity
Bourdain.
that one take episode where everyone is kind of like going at each other's throats in the kitchen.
Yeah.
This is very Bourdain-esque now that I think about it.
So here's the thing. I think you can make the argument, right, that even though the way Bourdain writes makes it seem very cool and romantic, you could argue that he isn't putting a stamp of approval on how things operate in the kitchen. He is trying to be a reporter, trying to show how things just are in the kitchens. I think you could also make the argument that The Bear says that is how things are, and that's bad. We should try to change that. We should try to make that a little bit better for people.
They ain't changed it too much.
They haven't.
People
They
astray.
don't change it that much, but I think it's a story of trying to change it.
Yeah, they didn't change it that much. Bourdain is sort of the classic sort of non-racist, non-misogynist. He's not that, but he's not doing much in his space to change it. And I think that's the step that would make the book feel a little more in step with today's times, where if you create a kitchen, in a weird way, The Bear kind of did that because as abusive as the restaurant culture is shown, the behind the scenes, cooking culture is shown to be, we don't see racism and we don't see misogyny. What we see is just abuse that's visited on everybody. I think that's the one thing that might have made Kitchen Confidential go down a little easier if there was some sense that instead of just accepting this male-dominated culture, once he was in charge of it, why not do things to unwind it?
You live, you learn, though. Like, I will say, like, in Roadrunner, the Bourdain that we got later in his life versus the Bourdain we get in the book are two different things. And I think I became a fan of the man he had become with no
I think a lot of people
reservations
are
or
like
parts
that.
unknown.
Yeah.
And it was because he was finally able to see outside of himself and see the world around him and go to, like, they talk about him going to Haiti or, going to Thailand, going to all these places. Because I think they said before then all he'd really gone to was France. or like gone to Japan for work, and he was able to like see outside himself and broaden his perception. And in the book he may have written he has no regrets, but I'm sure he had some.
It's funny how he paints this picture that the kitchen is this island of misfits where none of us like fit in normal society, and so we all found a home in the kitchen. And yet that island of misfits happens just to like recreate the power structures of regular society. Like there's no you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's when like there's like it's counterculture, but it's just the same culture in like a funny hat.
Yeah. In a leather jacket and smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
Wait, that should be on a t-shirt. that is such an amazing observation.
Yeah. All right, I want to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we'll talk about why this book is, or if this book is still worth reading today. We'll be right back.
This message comes from Whole Foods Market. Make every holiday party shine with Whole Foods Market. Hosting, stock up on their Wallet Happy 365 brand with appetizers like walnut honey shrimp and breaded calamari. Plus, save now on crowd-pleasing bone-in spiral cut ham with no antibiotics ever. For dessert, check out limited-time treats like their holiday rum cake. With so many ways to save on festive spreads all month long, shop Whole Foods Market today. Terms apply.
All right, final question, as always. Why should this book be read today? Eric, where are you at?
Well, for one thing, if you're a Bourdain fan and you experience it the way I did by listening to the audiobook, you just get to spend more time with Anthony Bourdain. And as much as we may have talked about his weak points, he's an engaging storyteller. He's a charismatic guy. He was really a pivotal figure in media, especially television and books aimed at food culture. And so it's a great way. It's a great way to spend some time with him. And get a look at how he was thinking, 25 years ago.
Yeah. I think the fact that this book came out with 2001?
2000.
2000.
And has had such a long influence on the culture, the way that we view kitchens, the way that we view that culture. I read the book coming in it thinking I was going to get like Wolf of Wall Street in a chef's hat, and I did not get that. I got like a lot.
By the way, somebody should write that book.
We're far too woke for that now.
But I don't know about that. I don't know about all that. Come on.
But I think that just to get an understanding of that world, it's also like it's a fairly quick read because his writing does flow. So I would recommend Kitchen Confidential. I would be curious about Medium Raw now. So that's saying something. There's some books that we've read this year that had sequels or like
that you're like never again. Done.
Like you're not gonna trick me. So
I know the okey doke. I'm not falling for that one.
So I'll give Bourdain that.
Yeah. I think it's worth reading today, if nothing but for the mastery of voice. I'm not saying like if you want to write, you should write exactly like Bourdain, but this is someone who understands how to write on paper like he speaks, in words, right? And I'll still throw on an old episode of Parts Unknown or No Reservations when I am struggling with writing copy, like for myself. Like I'll like take notes on how to write copy from Bourdain, to this day, right?
Yeah, great writing always inspires me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think this book is definitely worthwhile for that. All right, I think on that front, let's get into recommendations. If you like this, read that. Eric, you want to go first?
So I'm going to continue the sort of bizarre parallel that I drew earlier in the conversation. Bourdain's championing of sort of working class values inside an important space that serves the public reminds me of David Simon's approach to covering cops and crime in Baltimore. And so I would recommend people check out Homicide, A Year on the Killing Streets, the first book that he wrote that inspired the TV series Homicide: Life on the Street, and also launched David into the global entertainment space in a way that he was able to. He produced another book about Baltimore called The Corner, and then he also did, of course, The Wire and several other really interesting shows for HBO. But Homicide: A Year in the Killing Streets, you really get a sense of cops as sort of working class dudes oppressed by the system that doesn't work and doing whatever they can to just kind of get through their shift. And the guys who are respected are the guys who show up on time. They're people that the other cops can count on. All of these things that Bourdain also talks about in a different way in the restaurant space. So I think somebody who might read Homicide: A Year in the Killing Streets would see a lot of commonality in terms of really literate, really smart, really educated guys coming into a working class space and talking about how that works.
I mean, I have strong feelings about this one white man being the voice of a predominantly black city, and having like strong opinions about it. And I can see where
the parallel. You can see the parallels.
I can see the parallels. Don't
all
love
the stuff
it.
we just
but
talked about.
I understand it.
It's true about that. Yeah.
And that is also a man who has not yet, fully addressed his privilege or cares to. But that's above me. That's neither here nor there.
I love the way you bring it. I love it. Keep bringing it.
Okay. I had a really hard time. I've been stressing about this for like a few weeks, like trying to find a recommendation for this. But I thought about a book I read a couple of years ago that kind of spoke to maybe like the existential questions that Bourdain was having. But my recommendation would be Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zhang. It's like this dystopian. We're in this future where you're like the chef is given the choice to cook for this the few and the privileged in this dystopian future, but everything's like scarcity and thinking about like who have I become. And I don't know. I read it at the time, and I was thinking about it while I was reading Kitchen Confidential, and people have like mixed feelings about the book. I have picked a couple of books this season that have been, people have thoughts. But I found Zhang's writing really, really compelling. So go for it. It's weird. I found it fun and distressing.
Yeah. The book I want to recommend is Lizzy Goodman's Meet Me in the Bathroom.
Ooh.
So that's an oral history of the sort of indie rock boom of New York in the mid-2000s to the 2010s. And I picked it because Kitchen Confidential feels like such a New York book. And, being a New Yorker, it made me miss a New York I was never really a part of, right? Like this is all going on. A lot of this book is happening in Manhattan. Again, I was like too young and too priced out of like any of the scenes that he's really talking about. But I did miss the feeling of being in that era of New York. And Meet Me in the Bathroom similarly made me feel nostalgia for a New York that I knew that it was happening like across the river. And so these books just made me nostalgic for my hometown.
Oh,
cool.
Yeah. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for going on this ride with us.
Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this. I mean, this was really a pleasure.
Oh, lovely.
And now for this week's Phone a Fan, I spoke with chef and author Samin Nosrat. Hi, Samin.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
What's your relationship to Kitchen Confidential? Tell me about that first read, when you first read it.
It came late. I was not in the first wave of readers, partly because I was having my own experience as a young cook, and it was already so intense. And there was a way where I knew from sort of the commentary around it that it was glorifying a type of sort of, I don't know, kitchen culture that I was very much on the fringes of, but already was traumatized by. And so I didn't have a lot of interest in it as a cook. And only later as a writer, I was really curious because I've always believed and thought that Anthony Bourdain was a great writer. And so I wanted to read it for myself. And so by the time I came to it, I had formed my own opinions about that type of masculine, very sort of like aggro, or what's the word I like? Gonzo kitchen culture, that's very like glamorized and glorified.
And so when you first read it with, your experience with, years of kitchen experience under your belt, was it a lot of, oh, that's true. Oh, that is how that is. Or was it like, okay, buddy, let's pump these brakes. Like, what was the initial gut reaction? Yeah.
Oh, I did not by any means have any sense that that he was like exaggerating anything. I very much understood that that was likely true. It was just light years away from my own experience as like in a very sort of sheltered corner of the culinary world. You know, I came up at Chez Panisse, which was founded and has always been owned by a woman, by Alice Waters. It was a very sort of countercultural spirit that was the foundation of that restaurant. You know, I hate to have these sort of like gender binary divisions of like sort of kitchen culture and cooking, but I think there is a real aggro, like masculine thing. In a way, I think that there's aggression involved in all of these kitchens. I think at Chez Panisse, it leans a little bit more toward passive aggression. And in other types of kitchens, it's very like active aggression where there's like yelling and throwing and stabbing that we were a lot more controlled about in the restaurant, but not necessarily like to super far less sort of toxic ends.
I think, you know, this book was obviously just like a massive hit and it attracted, I think, a big tent of people. Assuming, right, I correctly assuming that there was a influx of Bourdain types, right?
Or acolytes. Like not even necessarily his type, but like his fans.
Yeah, you know? People who specifically said, I'm getting into this job because of this guy.
And there were like that's documented.
Yeah. Has that changed?
I don't know. I mean, you're talking to like a brown girl, like a daughter of immigrants who came up in a very white world, like specifically a very elite white restaurant world, and was always aware of my non-whiteness, you know, and made to be aware of it. I didn't have language or context for a lot of what was happening around me and to me as a young cook and like throughout my cooking career in restaurants. And it's only in retrospect, once I like went on a journey for myself of learning about like misogyny and racism and anti-racism, that I could then sort of put that into perspective. This is all to say at the time I was pretty reductive. And I think it's pretty reductive to say like all these white guys with tattoos are terrible people. You know what I mean? Or all these people who came because they were inspired by Anthony Bourdain were not here for the right reasons. That was maybe what I like felt in my most resentful or angry or hurt times. But I don't think there's any like sort of carpet statement to be made about any of it. I just think statistically, like there were many, many, many stories written about, you know, and quoting young men who were inspired by these words and drawn to this industry and behaved in the ways that he wrote about in those pages. And now, and that was 2000. It took till 2017 for Me Too to happen. And then what happens is like Tony Bourdain's like best friends are some of the people to be called out and taken down around all of this. And so it's only been in the last, I would say, 8 years that I, as a person, as an old, crotchety 46-year-old, like who sits outside of the restaurant industry and only just watches from afar, that I have started to witness like a shift.
Yeah. Do you think this book has anything to offer a young person interested in entering the field today?
Oh, absolutely. I still think I think it's really extraordinary writing. I think it's a really good read. I think there are absolutely parts of sort of what it means to be a cook, what it means to love to eat, what it means to have a relationship to food that is also like tied very deeply to your livelihood, what it means to live on the margins of society. I think all of those things spark feeling. I just hope that we have reached a point where in our culture this book is not held up as like the Bible and instruction manual for kitchen behavior, you know?
Yeah. All right, Samin, I thank you so much for taking the time. I really like talking to you. And folks, be sure to check out Samin's latest cookbook, Good Things, out now. Samin, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
This episode was produced by Cher Vincent and Chloe Weiner and edited by Megan Sullivan.
Engineering support by Kwesi Lee. And our executive producer is Yolanda Sanguini.
Thank you for listening to Books We've Loved from NPR. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
This message comes from Vital Farms, who works with small American farms to bring you pasture-raised eggs. Farmer Tanner Pace shares why he believes it's important to care for his land and how he hopes to pass the opportunity to farm onto his sons.
We're paving the way for a future. We only have one earth, and we have to make it count. Like my boys, I want to see them taking care of the land for them to be able to farm and then generations to come. I really enjoy seeing, especially my whole family up there working with me, and to be able to instill the things that my father, mother, and then grandparents instilled in me that I can instill in the boys. That's just the most rewarding thing that there could ever be. Vital Farms, they're motivated for the well-being of the animals, for the well-being of the land, the whole grand scope of things. They care about it all, and that means a lot to me.
To learn more about how Vital Farms farmers care for their hens, visit vitalfarms.com.